Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Grebner Show. This is Scott Kerker, along with Metamore head coach Jared Grebner. Coach, you went up to one of the more unique high school football venues in the state. I said it was to football what Alice Ingersoll Gym over in Canton is to basketball. It's been around for a long time. They've done a nice job. It's got its little quirks about it. You know, you talked about it. The fans are really, really close to the benches. Brand new turf though, but it is a neat place to go.
Oh, absolutely. It's a tremendous place to play. They have a big crowd. It's just a different feel with the fans right there. The turf looked great up there, and it is an amazing atmosphere.
LaSalle, Peru, last spring, 5-1. I believe that was good enough to win their conference, a very good conference with Morris and I believe Sycamore. Is Sterling in that conference with them?
No, they are not.
They're in the other half.
They're with Galesburg and Rock Island.
Okay.
Everybody.
But that's a very, very good conference. I believe Sandwich is in that conference. That's
correct.
Ottawa. There's some really good hard-nosed football teams up there, and they went 5-1, and they did graduate a lot, but they still had a lot of kids coming back, and they defeated Morton in week 1, 28-21. So it was a test.
They're a very good team. They're well coached. They're physical, and they had some big guys. I mean, even after the game, when you see them with their pads off, as they were walking by us as we were getting on the bus, I mean, even their running backs. I mean, they were thick. They had thick legs, big arms, and we went up there knowing it was going to be a tough game, and it was every bit of that.
Offensively, we'll get to your defense in a minute, but offensively, I thought. You guys were able to move the ball a little bit on them. We had some drives that kind of bogged down deep in their territory, similar to what happened that first week against Notre Dame. We got deep into LaSalle, Peru territory. Drive kind of bogged down. They did the same, though, when they got the ball. They bogged down in our territory.
And part of that is our starting field position. Starting field position is huge. There's many times where we'd start on the 25, we'd start on the 30, and that's a long way to go time and time again.
High school, yes.
And so we'd go 65 yards and we still wouldn't be in the end zone yet. And then all of a sudden we'd have one little breakdown to have a little setback. And so to be that flawless time and time and time again is hard, especially when you're going up against an opponent like that. And so it does change things a little bit. Our first touchdown, I believe, was our starting field position was actually on the 40 going in, and so right there we only had to go 40 yards, and we were able to capitalize. And so taking advantage of good field position when we can get it, and having to overcome the long field position can definitely be a factor.
But even in that drive, I believe he had a penalty and maybe a sack because Connor Willerton made a great play. It was a 53-yard touchdown pass to Solomon Schwartz, where I thought Connor did an outstanding job. The line did a nice job of creating a pocket for him. He stepped up and threw a pass and caught Solomon in stride for the first score of the game.
And he had to scramble just a little bit, and sometimes that's when he's at his best, is when he's not ad-libbing, but when he's moving around a little bit, and Solomon can find those seams, and they were able to connect.
And it was just beautiful. Caught him in stride for a touchdown, and it really kind of set the tone. That was about 3 minutes before halftime. You actually got the ball back right before halftime and started a drive, just ran out of time.
And that's one thing that we talked about last week a little bit here, was when we start to run the ball, it will open up the passing game. And so we were able to take advantage of Solomon as a weapon out on the perimeter.
You do have some weapons. You've got TJ Rising. You completed, what did we say, 8 passes the other night, all of them to Solomon. Not to say that those other guys weren't, but they kind of have a little bit of chemistry between them. And when Connor gets into a little bit of trouble, he looks for number 7.
He's generally very good at finding the open position, understanding that, all right, if Connor is rolling right or scrambling right, he changes his route to get open, and kind of that old scramble drill, and he does really well with that.
That's kind of what happened on our second touchdown. he started all the way on the left and came across when Connor had to roll out to his left or to his right. He came all the way across the field, caught the ball in stride again, and just kind of walked in from about the 12-yard line.
And those two just have a knack for finding each other, for knowing where each other is going to be, and that's just a tribute to the time that those guys continue to put in.
And not to say that you don't have some other receivers, because TJ Rising's an awful good receiving tight end. Garrett Taylor can catch the ball, and you had Dalton Shuda back this week. He can catch the ball.
And we also have Noah Simmons on the perimeter with great hands. Sam Ohl has great hands. Caden Hartnett, and so there are some weapons that might be start to overlooked by some teams. Due to scouting reports and things like that we have to also start to integrate within the game plan.
And you've won both of these games by playing hard-nosed, smash-mouth football. Ethan Petrie he's been a workhorse. He started off the game with a big 33-yard run that got us into LP territory the second play of the game.
And that play was well designed, and it was also well run by Ethan. It was one of the most patient runs we've seen him have, because normally he's a north-south type of runner, and he started off sideways, and just let those blockers kick guys out, and he cut in right behind them. And so that was the impressive thing, to see him have patience on that run.
Yeah, your line, I thought, did a really nice job. We only scored 2 touchdowns, but man, when you looked at the size of that LP defensive line, and then they had some, their linebackers weren't big. They were 5'9", 5'10", about 190, 195, but they flew around all over the place, and you could see why. Maybe those guys weren't starters last year, but you could see why LP was good last year, and in that first game, they really flew around and hit you.
And they were very disciplined as well as far as their assignments. Quarterback, running back, whoever was responsible for each, whether it was D lineman, linebacker, and they did make some adjustments from week 1 to week 2 as far as their defensive tackle against us. He played nose against Morton, and they put him over Wallace for the majority of the time, and put big on big, and tried to negate some of our tendencies and things like that. But overall, I think that we were able to move the ball. Didn't quite finish the drives like we would always like to, but nonetheless, we came out on top.
Maybe Pekin, but I don't know if we'll face anybody this regular season with that kind of size across their front line.
They were averaging about 240, probably 245. The biggest was maybe around 265, 270.
Well, they had one guy listed at 290, at number 75, I think.
Correct. But they kept putting 56. He was the big guy that gave us a little bit of trouble, trying to down block on him. He's the guy that I'm thinking about as defensive tackle. Defensive tackle that you're like, man, he gave us some fits, because not only was he big, but he was very athletic, and that's a good combination to have if it's on your side, but it faces it's a bigger challenge when it's on the opponent's side.
Right. But your team, I thought, played, your offense, I thought, did enough to win the game. They played very, very well, and when you needed to chew up some time, they chewed up some time for you.
That was key in the fourth quarter. They just kept finding a way. I thought they did a really good job. When we got the ball back there towards the end of the fourth quarter, of chewing up some clock. Did we score on that drive? No. Which would have sealed it, but they got us down into their territory, and they were able to get the ball back with just over a minute left, about a minute 20 or something like that, if I can recall. But overall, I thought they were able to move the ball, and were able to do some very good things.
Defensively, though, I have to say that's probably where you won the football game, was your defense.
Very similar to Notre Dame, and actually even more so than Notre Dame. It was, again, bend but don't break. There was a lot of times where you saw a couple big runs on the outside where we didn't quite fit right with contain, and they would march the ball down the field, and we'd stop them at about the 20, or we'd stop them at the 25, or somebody would come up with a huge play for us, whether it was strip sack or whether it was just a forced fumble or an interception, and somebody always found a way to make a big play on fourth down. Now, the good thing about that is we got off the field without them scoring. The bad thing is, like we mentioned earlier, was it gave us a long field offensively to deal with.
I thought the guy that just stood out for me was Gabe Minert. You mentioned he had like, what, 12 tackles and played an outstanding game. Played most of the game both ways. And but it seemed like whenever you needed to stop in the middle, he made the tackle. It was amazing.
Gabe had a phenomenal day. Both Minert brothers, they have a motor that doesn't quit. Both play guard for us, so both are going to be pulling quite a bit. Both play defensive end for us, and those guys hardly ever come off the field. And they're very, very athletic, as we've talked about beforehand. But Gabe, he definitely filled up the stat sheet on Friday night. He had 12 tackles. He had 3 for a loss. He had a sack. He had a forced fumble, and he was really just a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, he played outstanding. But you were constantly putting pressure on their quarterback, forcing him, when they did throw, to sometimes throw when he wasn't real comfortable. And he did complete some passes, but he paid for it too.
And that was one thing that we did want to do, is make them uncomfortable. We knew that passing wasn't their forte. They like to run the ball. And so we wanted to try and put them in situations where they had to pass the ball and play left-handed, so to speak. And when they were passing, we were able to get pressure on them for the most part. And like you said, they did complete some passes, but I was pleased with the effort and our pass rush.
Then at the end of the game, that constant pressure, they constantly had to make a good play. You put that kind of pressure on them, and they had a bad snap. The quarterback recovered it, tried to throw down the field, and Caden Hartnett came up with a big interception to kind of seal the game for you. It was almost fitting that your defense made the big play to win it, because they're the ones that kept you in the game.
Yeah. And to have them out there, we have all the confidence in the world in the defense. Same thing with the offense. But that defense rose to the challenge. We did give up some yards, but we're playing a little bit softer with 50 seconds left and things like that, knowing that they had to go pretty far. But Caden made a great play on the ball. We always kind of have the joke in my family that when Braden recovered that fumble against Washington, that at that moment he was my favorite nephew at the time. When Caden makes that interception, all right, now he's my favorite nephew. So it can change daily, but at that moment, it was Caden.
Yeah, and it's nice to have a 6'1" defensive back there too.
Being long and rangy, that never hurts anything.
No, not at all. And they had some height in their receiving core, and they're not the ones that hurt you. Now, they had some guys coming out of the backfield that were pretty good. That's always tough on a linebacker, though, to cover that, to find that running back that's gone in motion and then catch up to him. But you guys never let that really hurt you too badly.
We gave up one. It was on a 3rd and long that set them up for a 4th and short that I didn't think that we reacted to as well as we should have. But outside of that, there was no big pass plays where they caught us peeking in the backfield, where they caught us coming up on the run when they got a big ball over top.
For as many of those sweeps that they tried, and they had some speed out there. Number 11 was very fast. 34 was pretty fast. And there was a couple times I think their lone touchdown came on a sweep that you guys strung it out real well, but your linebackers got it maybe a little bit too close to the line of scrimmage and kind of got caught up a little bit. But for the most part, you guys played those sweeps pretty textbook. You just kept, keeping that outside shoulder free and stringing it out, and pretty soon that backside pursuit made a ton of tackles. And you had to be happy with that.
And that's one thing that we constantly preach is get as many jerseys to the ball. Last week it was get as many white jerseys to the ball as possible. You never know what's going to happen. There's a couple times, they actually started to try and reverse field a little bit, so that backside is pretty important to never give up on a play. And plus, if you're the second guy in, third guy in, well, that's when you can start to gamble a little bit and try and strip that ball out of there. So good things happen when a lot of guys get there.
Yeah, and you had a big strip, and we recovered a fumble right after halftime, I believe it was. And I believe that's the one when we scored our second touchdown. I believe that was it Bogdan that forced that fumble?
I know Bogdan recovered that fumble.
Maybe he recovered.
That might have been when Gabe
Minor
forced
the fumble. Yeah. And I was thinking that was the other way around, but you're right. It was Bogdan that recovered it. But overall, I think you had to be happy that you went up there. You've played two solid football teams, and you've come out on top on both. And you know what? You were the better team both times.
And to have those tough 2 tests, behind us, to help us prepare for the Mid-Illini and for the rest of the season, and to be able to come out 2-0 right now, we consider ourselves fortunate because some of those games could have went either way. A mistake here or a mistake there, but to learn from some of our own mistakes while still getting the W, is just very fortunate on our part.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought that, and to come out of it, luckily, knock on wood, you came out of it pretty much injury-free. And that's always a plus, no matter how deep you are or what the case may be. Because that was a pretty hard-hitting ball game.
It was physical. On the way back home, I was walking back and forth on the bus, asking guys how they're doing, and there's a lot of guys that were sore. And after a hard-hitting game like that, I really didn't expect any other answer, but I wanted to make sure there wasn't anything, more serious. But everybody knew that was a hard-hitting game, a hard-fought game, and they were wore out after that one.
And that's a good sign. You now go into conference play. You start off with East Peoria. East Peoria a little down this year, and the good thing about that is now you can start to see, you can maybe start working on some things, and you can start maybe expanding a few plays, but you can clean some things up in the next couple weeks.
And we have to clean some things up regardless. One thing that we have to keep doing is Metamora not beating Metamora. There's some times where, you get in your own way, or you can be your own worst enemy just because of a simple breakdown here, or just stepping with the wrong foot here, or not taking the proper read step. And so there's a lot of things that we got to get cleaned up, and it's going to be a very detail-oriented work week this week in practice.
And that's always a good thing. The attention to detail, kind of a staple in Metamora football. And that may be what sets us apart at times with other teams. And when you can control the clock like you have the last 2 weeks, because that's what you've done, you've pretty much controlled the clock, that usually means a W.
And I know from the offensive point of view, we haven't run as many plays as we would have liked. I think it was 45 or 46 against Notre Dame. It was maybe 42 or 43 against LaSalle Peru. It was actually even less. And so to have our guys get in a rhythm, to get out there and establish themselves a little more and continually do that, we're looking forward to having that opportunity once again.
When you look at the Mid-Illini Conference, and that's where this week it starts. This is the beginning. That was the preseason. Now you're heading into the main part of your football schedule, and it's progressively going to get a little tougher. There's some big teams down towards the end of the season, the Washingtons and the Pecans, and Dunlap and even Morton's good. Those are 4 teams that are going to be pretty tough. When you look at those teams, and we've played. I'm going to go out on a limb and say we've played possibly the hardest non-conference schedule of any team in the Mid-Atlantic Conference, and you're 2-0. Those other teams have either got a loss or they have not played real well yet.
And that's part of high school football. High school kids are going to make mistakes. Pekin, they played Rock Island, was able to shut them out. They played Belleville East, got a good win there. Washington played a good opponent in Kankakee, that was state ranked and everything like that. So there's some schools that have played a lot of pretty good opponents, although they might not have come up with a W in all the cases. That everybody in the middle line is going to be battle tested coming into conference play, and so we'll have to see how things play out.
But I think you've set yourself up really, really well for a nice, for the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
You've set yourself up really nice because you definitely haven't peaked yet, mm-hmm. and the ceiling for this football team, I think, is pretty darn high. And to win and know that you can still get a lot better, that's a good thing to have right now.
Those games were competitive. They're hard hitting. It shows us exactly what we need to work on. We don't get a false sense of security with those types of wins. We know who we are right now, but the good thing is we know where we can be.
That's a good thing. It's nice to be 2-0 though, isn't it?
It's always nice to get those W's when possible.
Well, Coach, we'll let you get going here, but thank you very much. And it'll be nice to be home again this Friday night against East Peoria. It's always nice to be home at Malone.
Absolutely.
But again, congratulations. We'll see you Friday night.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott.